Let me start off the new year by saying coffee. I haven't fully decompressed from the events of last week, but I've been thinking about something I've always thought about for a long time. And I'm going to probably sound like a kook when I say it, but many, many years ago, and I think it was about 1983 when I was still in high school, I had not one, but a series of dreams that were pretty spooky at the time. And in one dream, I think it was the first one, I was a member of the news media sent to cover a story, or I was in the news media or something watching a story. And what it was a group of separatists, Americans, were involved in a violent action against authorities. And they had called in the U.S. military because they were a threat, and they were taking care of them. And we were, I remember the scene of walking along a river bank, and in my dream it was the Merrimack River, walking along the river bank in essentially a war zone. Not hyperbole, like people walk into a tornado and tornado damage and say it looks like a war zone, but I mean a real war zone where explosions had taken place and there was destruction and damage and death. And in the foreground was a bombed out railroad bridge, and we were walking towards it, and in the background was a big steep hill, and at the top of the hill the insurrectionists had dug in and were being dislodged by the military. And I could hear, and there was all this smoke coming off the top of the hill, and I could hear helicopters flying around and jets, and I heard I heard a voice say they're using napalm on them now, and then big orange explosions going off. And that was essentially it. That was the end of the dream. And then the second dream was there was like a crowd of people standing out over a harbor cheering as a whole bunch of U.S. jets were flying overhead. And it was just this really eerie feeling. And then the jets flew over the water and disappeared over the horizon, where you could hear and see orange flashes, and you hear the sounds of war in the background, boom, 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 boom. And then I think the last dream, it wasn't really the last dream, but the third dream was standing in like a courthouse square or something, and officials in the courthouse square were taking down the American flag for the last time. They were taking it down as if this was no longer a part of America, or the United States did not exist. And I don't know the context of it. And they were just taking it down and being very disrespectful about it, and throwing it on the ground and things like that. And then people were just not sad, not mad, not happy. They were just kind of like, life goes on. Now, as if to tell me something about these dreams, and this is the kooky part, I mean, these are all just like, we make our own reality in this world in many ways, and the way we see things. But the kooky part is, I had another dream that had seemingly nothing to do with any of the other dreams, except it happened at pretty much, I almost think, the same night. It was like 4 dreams, and I remember them all. Often you don't remember your dreams. And the last one was, we were living in East Independence at the time, in a neighborhood called Salem East. And the last dream was that we moved. And we moved to a neighborhood like on the Kansas border or in Kansas or something. And and one day I went out exploring, and the house we were living in was completely under construction. There was like parts of it that were unfinished and everything. And I went for a walk one day, and I was exploring, and there was the ruins of a country club type thing, like a neighborhood country club. And it was a ruined building and remains of, I think, a swimming pool and things like that. And, well, it wasn't long after that, 1986 to be exact, my father bought a house and we moved to it in Grandview, about a mile or so from the Kansas state line. And the house needed a lot of work, so that we started working on it. As a matter of fact, we worked on it for quite a while before we actually moved into it. We moved into it, and it's still unfinished. As a matter of fact, even to this day, the kitchen is still not done. And, I mean, the house is there. And then one day I went walking and was exploring and found the remains of an old country club. And it was by a lake that's within the neighborhood, and pretty well forgotten for a lot of years. And it was at that time it dawned on me, whoa, I've seen this before. I dreamed about it, and it was in context with the other dreams about our country. And then things started happening that let me know that these kind of things are possible. Ruby Ridge, Waco. And I wasn't aware of history, but 1985, I guess, in Philadelphia, when the police firebombed the whole neighborhood. And so I know that human beings being human beings, we are capable of much destruction. And when craziness takes over our nature and we subscribe to all sorts of ideals and beliefs, we could be driven to madness to the point of insurrection and murder. And let's not forget that when you have large institutions such as governments, they aren't innocent either. And so now in these days, post insurrection in Washington, which may be the first shot in a long war, it may not have a happy ending. I hope it does. I hope, like all humans, that justice prevails and things get better. But in light of that, now I think when I was in high school, if I had thought our country was gonna get to this level of kookiness, I would have thought all those dreams were crazy. But now I don't think so much. And maybe it's just the way I'm looking at the world, and it's the visions. Maybe this isn't even real. Maybe maybe I should be questioning reality. Maybe I'm crazy, but I don't know. I think we need to figure something out here, because this problem is not going to get smaller or go away. And, excuse me, the fact that there are a group of people who are so self-righteous that they would be willing to destroy the ideals of our country all the while wrapping themselves in the imagery of our country and saying that they are being patriots and doing the opposite. No, that it is clear what they are doing. They attempted a coup. They attempted to take down the duly and properly elected government of the United States in order to place at the head a leader who, once he got that kind of adoration and power, as history has shown us, that leader would never relinquish it, and we would have, in essence, a dictatorship. No matter what we would claim or say to the opposite, we would have a cult of personality in Washington, a dictatorship, and a very seemingly crazy, unstable man. And I think people need to step back and reflect on that we have gotten to this point, that the cult of personality and ego is overshadowed what our country is and what it has stood for such a long time. But I guess it's not such a long time. I mean, the Roman Republic lasted longer than the American Republic. And there were a lot of problems with the Roman Republic. It eventually turned into the Roman Empire, with emperors who wanted to kill you if you didn't think of them as a god. And that led to a long period of Europe after the empire declined, where kings emulated the Roman emperors, and almost all the kings gave themselves titles that referred back to the emperors of Rome. And and the whole idea of royalty and entitlement that Americans fought against in our Revolutionary War and said, no, we don't want this anymore. We want government of the people, by the people, for the people, not a government where a few people at the top make slaves and peasants out of everyone else and demand that everybody serves them. And unfortunately, some of my more jaded friends will point out to me, well, actually, if you look at it in truth, that's the way we are, and police are here to defend the wealthy. And I'm like, yes, I know that. That is a weakness of democracy. That is a weakness of the system. That you give people free will, and people will work towards their own benefit, and eventually a few will come to the top and lord over the rest. But the American ideal, even if it doesn't match the reality, is at least a good effort in the right direction. And there's nothing to say that we can't improve. Although, if you look at history, you can get jaded and say that's not the way history is run. And I'm like, well, but actually look at it, because it goes in cycles, and the Roman Republic did last quite a while before it became the Roman Empire. And you can say what you can about the Roman Republic, that it was not great, but before that you had the Greek city-states, and many of them were pretty much fairly pure democracies, although they weren't perfect. I mean, it's always a work in progress. Human beings, we keep trying and trying and trying until we get it right. But then people step in and say, oh, no, we want our king. We want our king. Well, I don't want a king. I hate to quote John Wilkes Booth, but the thing he said when he assassinated Lincoln and jumped onto the stage and broke his leg was, what was it? Thus unto tyrants, Six Semper Tyrannis, I believe, which is Latin, and I probably butchered it horribly. You know, it's ingrained in our beliefs, even to the point that people can become radicalized and think they're doing the right thing, and actually do the wrong thing. So, apart from becoming true believers in a cult-like cause, we have to be intelligent, independent thinking human beings, looking out first for ourselves and our families, and realizing that everyone around us is also a part of who we are, and if we don't look out for each other, then another symbol comes up. The one that's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, the snake, broken into pieces. It basically said, "Divided we fall." So, here's to at least another 800 years of democracy in America.